This world isn't built for me. It never has been, and it probably never will be. That's a harsh and off-putting statement, but it's the reality I live in. When I was in second grade, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. Asperger's syndrome is defined as a mild form of autism, characterized by social impairment, isolation, and what others may see as eccentric behavior. In recent years, Asperger's syndrome and a bunch of other disorders similar to it have been grouped under the umbrella term of autism spectrum disorder. Autism spectrum disorder usually gets the rep of being easy autism. So it's my goal here today to explain to you why it's not easy. And I'm going to do this by looking at the problems people face with social cues, the different characteristics, and just the day-to-day troubles someone with ASD has. I'm going to do this following a framework I created especially for this. It was an idea I came up with to help neurotypical people understand people like me who have ASD. It's called the 3 Ls. The 3 Ls being learning, listening, and loving. By following these 3 Ls, you can truly understand someone like me who has ASD. And to show that, I'm going to be adding in anecdotes from my life experience to give you real-life examples of what it's like to live with ASD. The first L is learning. Learning about someone who has ASD and the differences between a neurotypical person and a person with ASD can not only broaden your knowledge on different view sets in the world, but it can also help you be a better friend with someone with ASD. Autism spectrum disorder primarily targets social interactions. So there's some social differences between a neurotypical person and someone with ASD. The foundation of this being obsession. Obsession is the one thing a person with ASD doesn't know how to stop talking about. And for me, that's Disney. I love Disney a lot. Like, a lot. And I can go on for it for hours and hours. But that's where the problem lies. When I was younger, it was the only thing I could talk about. It got bad enough in my household where my parents had to set up a Disney time, aka a time where one of the two of them would come up to my room, bear the brunt, and just let me rant to them about Disney for 20 minutes. And the rule in the house was I wasn't allowed to talk about Disney except for that time. It became a big enough problem outside of my household where people didn't want to be around me. That's because every conversation with me became annoying and predictable. This idea of obsessiveness leads to the fact that it's not uncommon for people with ASD to have long-winded and one-sided conversations. This is because they can't think for the other person. Now, what I mean by this is, say you're having a conversation with someone who has ASD. They can't think for the fact that the other person needs to speak in a conversation, or the other person has ideas, or the other person may just want to talk about something different. And that leads us to the general art of having a conversation. The general art of having a conversation is something I would guess most of you don't think about on a regular basis. But for someone who has ASD, in a social situation, it is the only thing they can think about. Eye contact is a fundamental root of having a conversation. And studies have shown that people with ASD tend to do one of two things. They either make too much eye contact to the point where the other person becomes uncomfortable, or they make too little eye contact to the point where the other person feels disrespected. Now, I know for me, whenever I'm having a one-on-one conversation, or just even giving a presentation like this, thoughts like, am I making too much eye contact, or am I looking at this person too much, or do I need to look away, are flying in and out of my head. Literally right now, all of you are looking at me, and it's freaking me out. When I was prepping for this, my mentor told me, if you get nervous on stage, just think of your audience in their underwear. That will help your nerves. But for me, that doesn't necessarily help because seeing you guys doesn't bother me. It's all of you seeing me. So when I like to think about getting my nerves down, I think of my audience as being non-existent. Recently, well, actually not recently, it was about 2 years ago, I did a study on my high-functioning autism, and I took to social media for this. I set up a scenario on my Instagram that I asked all of my friends, my family, and followers to answer. The scenario was, your best friend comes up to you asking you, hey, how was your day? Then I offered 2 questions. The first question being is, how would you respond? The second question being, what were you thinking when you responded? I'm going to give you guys a second to think of your answer. Now, I found that most people responded with something I would say, I would instinctively answer good, because that's what I do. Or I would think for a moment and then say good or bad. But when I'm asked a question like that, even as simple as, hey, how was your day? That's not what happens. When I'm asked the question, hey, how was your day? I instinctively want to answer truthfully. So my mind starts going moment by moment of what's happened in the day. But that's where the problem begins. It starts spanning out to how something happened today relates to something that happened 5 years ago, or how I'm hungry in the moment, so I need to think about that. And that leads to a delay of response or a moment just to utter the words, good, how about you? And you'll notice that also a lot of people with ASD forget the how about you. So, why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you all of this because it's not uncommon for neurotypical people not to know about ASD. Because of that, you see a lot of people just not learning about it and not understanding. People not understanding is leading to a lot of scary and unfortunate things. The biggest being people with autism spectrum disorder not having friends. It is not uncommon for someone who has autism spectrum disorder to have little to no true friends. We're faced with comments every day such as, why can't you be normal? Or why can't you understand me? All of this has been said to me to my face, and I'm not even including everything that has been. Depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and even suicide are highly linked with autism spectrum disorder. The reason they're highly correlated is because no one's truly taking the time to understand these people, the good in these people, the creativity in these people, and the fact that they are good friends. This goes along with studies showing that people with ASD want these true and genuine relationships, but are unable to get them because we're not given the opportunity to. So, you're probably wondering now, well, if you have all of these differences and you supposedly come across, how can you come across as normal? Well, the answer is simple. The answer is camouflaging. Camouflaging is a term that can be broken down into 3 different skills: compensation, assimilation, and masking. Masking being the most common technique used by people with ASD, and the one I specifically use. So that's the one I'm going to talk about today. Masking is basically me hiding my emotions, my feelings, even my personality traits to come across as normal. But the problem with masking is that it leads to burnout. Burnout, in essence, is an extreme mental, physical, or emotional exhaustion, usually accompanied by a loss of skills. It stems from overstimulation, too much masking, or what I like to consider too much of the real world. It is a very scary thing to watch someone go through, and it's even scarier to have it happen to you. When I go into burnout, my mind completely shuts off. I don't know where I am, I don't know who I'm with, I don't know what to think. They're just clouds in my head. I emotionally start breaking down, and I am unable to move. If I'm not supported upright, I will collapse to the ground because my body gives in, and if it becomes severe enough, I lose feelings in my arms. It has never gotten to this point in my life, but I know that if it got worse, I could pass out due to hyperventilation or overstimulation. And that's a really scary thing to think about. So that's where my second L, listening, comes into play. These freak accidents, like burnout, happen not so often with people with ASD. I do want to clarify that. But it happens. So listening to people's need with ASD, like for example, for me, I have a playlist on my phone, on YouTube, of Disney park shows. So think parades, fireworks. And I instruct all of my friends and family, if I'm ever going into a situation like burnout, you need to give me that phone and put me into that playlist. Because it's not going to stop it, but it's going to help me build out of it. It's not going to be a sudden build out of it, but it'll be presented that stimuli, I will be able to build out of it. Unlike the possibility that I wouldn't if I wasn't presented with it. So you're probably thinking now, well, why would you mask if it's going to lead to something as bad as burnout? Well, think about it. This world, especially college students, are afraid of what we do not know. So if there's a bar set socially I'm supposed to hit that I can't hit, do the things that I can't control, I'm completely isolated from everything and everyone I know. There's an analogy I want to paint in your head of why we mask. So you're in a boxing ring, there's a really tough opponent across from you. You're going to go in, you're going to be wearing gloves, and you're going to be protecting yourself so you don't get hit. I would hope none of you would go in like this. No gloves, just standing there like this. That's me going into the world without masking. Masking is my gloves. Masking keeps me safe. And masking is needed for my survival. Listening to people with ASD can also help them through tough times. Change is something especially hard for people with autism spectrum disorder. And lucky for all of you, I just went through a major life change, so I get to talk about it. The transition from high school to college life was great in some aspects. Academically, perfectly fine. Independent living, perfectly fine. Social department, not so good. And I started dropping my guard. My masking started to fall off a little bit. And that made me mad at myself, because sometimes that authentic ASD side of me, which isn't the prettiest, came out to people. And it didn't give off a good vibe. People didn't understand, people didn't want to learn, and some people just weren't nice about it. So one night, I just sat in my dorm, and I sat there and I said, you know what? I'm going to be authentic sometimes, and that's okay. But I need to be around those people that are going to be there to support me and to listen to me when I need that help, when I am authentically ASD. And luckily, I like to report back, I have found those friends. I have people in my life now who are willing to support and listen to me and help me with what I need when I go into those authentic modes. And that brings me to my third and final L, loving. Loving someone with ASD and giving them support is the most important thing that you can do. This is a permanent disorder. I will have this for the rest of my life, and so will everyone else who has ASD. But we fight. We fight to show this world that we aren't defined by it. But at the same time, we're fighting to show that it isn't easy. We're fighting to show that we can also live a purposeful life of significance and give as much worth as anyone else can. But that fight is hard, and that fight brings a lot of struggle. So that's why support is so important to us, because it makes us feel like we're not alone in a world that we don't feel like is built for us. Love has saved my life. ASD, and living with ASD, I like to relate to Pinocchio a little bit. Yeah, we're back at Disney. Pinocchio has this obvious difference that makes him from being a real boy. And I have my obvious difference from making me a real boy. But he works hard to come across and be the real boy that he's expected to be. But he trips, he stumbles, he twists himself up, and he messes up. And so do I. And so does everyone else with ASD. We mess up a lot. I will never be the perfect friend, boyfriend, son, brother, whatever. I won't be the perfect one ever. But the thing about people with ASD is we're willing to learn from those mistakes. We're willing to take those mistakes and build us as people. And that's something I believe makes us truly special. So now as I leave you guys today, I want to offer you guys one more little tidbit. It's kind of a request. You may know people in your life with ASD. You may not know people in your life. You might meet someone in your life at some point with ASD. Follow those 3 L's. Learn about them. Learn about what it looks like for them. Learn about the different tricks or their triggers. Listen to them in their moments of crisis, but also love them and know that they aren't alone. Because all we really want in this world is love, friendship, and the chance to feel like normal in a world not built for us. Thank you.